According to the IRS, governmental records and other identifying documents indicates that well over 90 million tax-paying U.S. citizens are overpaying their income taxes each year. Typically, this happens because you're having too much taken out of your paycheck each period. These taxpayers are who Uncle Sam loves, and not only that, so does the taxpayer's employer. Those extra dollars are literally a free loan towards the federal government. And that is only if your employers report those extra dollars back to the IRS. Millions of taxpayers would just simply trust that their employers are accurately following federally regulated protocol. But according to private investigative researchers and many politicians, this regulatory compliance tends to be circumvented by many employers, and in most cases on a monthly basis. Now you might be wondering why. Well, I will state a two-part answer to this question. First, I must make mention of how most of these, quote, lawful regulations are disingenuously implemented into effect merely under the color of law. For example, I recently crafted a poll to my followers on Facebook, inquiring about how many people were truly aware of whom they actually pay their taxes to. Now, I am more than sure that your answer will be the IRS, right? But surprisingly enough, that answer is unknowingly incorrect. This can be confusing and startling to many that have just heard about this for the very first time. So I will elaborate more on this subject right now. Taxpayers that are earning less than approximately $114,000 a year are literally paying their taxes to their employers. Wait, it gets worse. Your employers does have to pay their own taxes to the IRS, but you as the employee must pay that portion as well. Not only that, the employer's portion that you must pay is equal to the exact same amount of the original portion that you're already paying for your own individual taxes from your wages.
Tax is regressive because companies just pass the costs on to consumers. Tax is regressive because companies just pass the costs on to consumers. Can I argue that taxes on me are bad because I just pass the costs on to my employer in the form of demanding higher wages?
Mr. Michael? Careful now. Chairman, Representative Lech. In fact, there is an argument about that, and I think it's one of the reasons why employers are concerned. Normally you would think, hey, an employer is not concerned about the individual income tax because that tax is imposed on its employees. It's because that tax is imposed on its employees. And so therefore, why do they care? Well, they do care to a certain extent because to the extent that labor is mobile and moves from state to state, and they have to attract, and one of the things that they're forced to do is to attract good, skilled labor because that's the way they succeed as a business. And if in fact, one state has a much higher income tax than another state, the only way they can attract labor from a national pool would be to raise compensation to offset the fact that you have a higher income tax. So there's some economic theory that would in fact suggest that what you're saying is true. What you're saying is true. What you're saying is true.
Now let's stop it right there so that I may shine a much brighter light on what he just stated here. Employers have numerous payroll tax withholding and payroll obligations. These taxes are most commonly known as Social Security tax, Medicare tax, payroll taxes, federal payroll taxes, and the FICA withholding tax, which is the most important. An employer's federal payroll tax responsibilities include withholding from an employee's compensation and paying an employer's contribution for Social Security, and Medicare taxes under the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, also known as the FICA. The Federal Insurance Contributions Act is the quote, federal lawful code managed under the color of law that requires you to pay 3 separate taxes from the wages you pay to your employers. In other words, the FICA is the requirement of withholding from an employee's wages, and as well as an employer's portion of the taxes that must be paid by the employees. Since I've covered the grounds with asphalt, now it's time to mark the pavement so you can see clearly where this road is going. Buckle up, safety first. The second half of my 2-part answer is pretty simple, straightforward, and definitely the most important part of this segment because it plays a huge relevant but so evilly manipulative factor surrounding our everyday lives.
There is no law that requires the average American worker in the private sector to pay a direct unapportioned tax on their labor and compensation for services. There is no law.
Why do you think you've been able to get away with not paying or filing your income taxes for so long?
Well, first of all, I've not gotten away with anything. I'm not hiding from anyone. I'm simply asking the IRS to show me the laws that apparently require me to do these things, and they are suspiciously reticent to answer questions from me, and of course there are millions of other people, many other organizations who have attempted to get answers. They act very suspiciously when asked to simply sit down at the table with the American people and discuss what their obligations are. Rather than pulling up a chair, they pull out a club.
They're calling us tax cheats, they're calling us fanatics, they're calling us weirdos. I don't care what you call me, but I have one question. Where is the law? Show me the law.
These liens that are recorded against people by the government for tax liens are nothing more than allegations. They are non-substantive. They have never been determined by a neutral third party, such as a court, to have one shred of validity.
If you ever get a notice of an audit or anything else, the first thing you should do is a Freedom of Information Act request for records that they're using to substantiate or justify the audit.
Really expected that of course there's a law that you can point to in the law book, the code that requires you to file a tax return. Of course there is. Maybe I don't know what it is right then as he was speaking to me, but sure. So naively I agreed to go off and research it and get back to him. 3.5 months later, I was at that point where I couldn't find the statute that clearly made a person liable, at least not me and most people I know, and I had no choice in my mind except to resign.
I had to leave the IRS because I presented evidence that I had accumulated indicating that the agency was violating the law and violating people's rights. And I asked the agency for a response to my sincere concerns. And the answer I got was that they would not respond to my concerns and that they would provide me with the paperwork necessary to tender my resignation.
But We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education put a full-page ad in the USA Today on July 7th, 2000. And within the body of that ad was a $50,000 challenge for anyone that could show the law. And to me, $50,000 is a lot of money. So I went after that and did the research based on the fact that I thought, let's put this baby to bed. I'm hearing all these rumors. I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I'll answer these people's questions they're asking me, and then I'll win this $50,000. And, based on the research that I did throughout the year 2000 and that I'm still doing, I have not found that law. I've asked Congress, we've asked a lot of people in the IRS commissioners, helpers. They can't answer, because if they answer, the American people are going to know that this whole thing is a fraud.